Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Show. I'm your host, Corey Sievers, and on behalf of the Savvy team here, congratulations for joining us here on the show. We're going to be talking about some interesting topics today. We'll be talking about foods that heal and foods that kill. And then in the Wealthy and Wise section, we're going to be talking about whether you have wishy-washy goals. So definitely stick around for that. Now, this whole topic of foods, it's an interesting one, and we don't really want to get into too much of the political sorts of debates and the debate. There's just so much misinformation and opinions and everything out there. So what we want to do in this session is sort of zoom out, go, take a bit of a step back and have a look at what some of the evidence shows so that we can collectively look at what we all agree on and what we can do, to help you optimize your diet. That's what we're really all about here in the Savvy team, helping you to reach a higher level of health and lifestyle. So congratulations for being with us here on the show. Great to have you with us. So in this particular show, we're going to be dealing with foods that heal, foods that kill, and discussing really how to eat in order to effectively program your body for health, for brains, and for beauty. Does that sound like a good plan? Well, I think it is. And certainly myself, I've had to make many adaptations in my thinking about diet and lifestyle and those sorts of things. So it's always a growing thing. So what we're doing here is sharing with you what we believe is the best available evidence that we have right now. Okay, and so one of the big challenges when people get locked into a certain dogma is that they no longer keep their mind open. And they say that that a mind is like a parachute; it only works when it's opened. So I encourage you really to have an open mind to what we're sharing here and think, well, what does this mean for me, and what changes should I be making? Because what I assert, and many experts and doctors assert, is that we've been led astray by the typical dietary guidelines. Okay, and it's only been really the free thinking, outside the box type of doctors and practitioners and dietitians that have been able to break through the dogma and actually share, what their discoveries have been. And it's an interesting thing when we deal with people that are in the system. Now, I'm not a dietitian, I am not a doctor, I do not want to be either of those, but I am a passionate researcher and certainly somebody who has had a 30-year experience in helping people to guiding them to a higher level of wellness. And I've been involved in the past in quite substantial regeneration in people. And so I'm not just talking about improving health a little bit. I'm talking about understanding what we can do to really support the cellular and epigenetic concepts of the body so that we really do reach health, beauty, and brains. And so I want to share with you the information from many doctors, researchers, endocrinologists, and all that sort of thing to give you the best available evidence as to what you can do to optimize your lifestyle. Now, here in the Savvy team, we do believe that diet is very, very important, and our Eat Savvy diet sort of underpins all of our wellness programs. But in this day and age, with stress, with electromagnetic frequencies, with all of the things that bombard us, and the fact that we're never perfect in what we do assert that supplementation is still very, very important on top of a good diet. So if you're still practicing getting towards a good diet, that means supplementation is even more essential. If you have certain restrictions that you've placed on yourself because of beliefs, religion, not vegan, not wanting to be cruel to animals, all of these sorts of things, then that means supplementation is even more important for you. So, the better you are with your diet, the less you may need to supplement your diet. But we still believe in this day and age that it is so, so important. I think you'll understand why we assert that when you really have a look at this particular information. So, that all being said, look, big congratulations for being with us here as we talk about foods that heal and foods that kill. And look, if you're new here to what we do in the Savvy team, if you've just joined us here on the live session, then we're all about helping you enjoy improved health and lifestyle. And so when you connect in with our community, which is free, you'll have access to our step-by-step action plans, innovative solutions, and all the guidance and support that you need to reach a high level of wellness and live life to the full. Here's just an example of some of our wellness programs. And we really are so passionate about being here to inspire you, to motivate, and to guide you to achieve your family's health and lifestyle goals. So please do be aware that as we're getting underway here, that as I mentioned before, I am not a doctor, I am not a medical practitioner, and we are not dispensing any medical advice. And so any of the information reflects my personal research and experience and is for educational purposes only, so should not be deemed as medical advice. The information is general in nature, and so all of your individual health concerns have not been taken into account. Any comments, any experiences should not be interpreted as medical advice or therapeutic claims. So if you have any questions as to the appropriateness of the information with regards to your own health, please do discuss this with your healthcare provider. That being said, we do encourage you to take self-responsibility for your own well-being and learn more on this topic about diet and all this sort of thing, and on complementary medicine in general, because, as I was mentioning before, many doctors and practitioners are actually bound by the very bodies that they belong to. And this is one of the downsides of our current medical system. And so we've seen in the news that many free-thinking medical practitioners and dietitians who have gone outside the boundaries of the establishment have actually had their licenses threatened. And so much of the information I'm going to share with you today is the sort of information that even if your doctor knows, even if your dietitian knows, even if they've well studied it, they may feel unable to even share it with you. So far from this, that's why our community is so important. It's a groundswell of people helping people, sharing with people, and creating a community awareness about what everyone can do to optimize their own well-being. Because we're in a system where even if a doctor or a therapist or a dietitian believes something counter to what they're being told they should tell you, they may be restricted in actually telling you until the establishment changes. So far from it being, where you'll get necessarily the latest scientific advice, you may actually get outdated advice that these people were taught in college. I'm sorry, that's my opinion, but it's certainly what I've seen, and it's certainly what's been highlighted in much of the news when we've seen medical practitioners actually, potentially be threatened with the loss of their license because, for example, they recommended a low-carb diet to a diabetic patient. Seriously. I mean, that's what we're dealing with in this establishment. So that's why we so much assert that you take self-responsibility for your own well-being and you learn about these topics and you tap in with all of the education that we provide so that you can take control moving forward and never be at someone else's beck and call, so to speak. So we got your back. That all being said, we are so passionate about helping you understand and uncover some of this information. So if there's something about your health and wellness you would like to improve, then we can certainly guide you there. All right, so this is a very interesting topic that we're about to jump into: foods that heal and foods that kill, and how to eat in order to program your body for health, brains, and beauty. If that sounds like a good plan, then definitely give us a thumbs up and definitely share this with your community, okay? Because this, I really feel that this is information that does need to get out there. And do stick around, because we'll be talking about whether you have wishy-washy goals in the wealthy and wise section. So we're going to jump on into the fun facts segment of the show, and we're going to be talking about your mitochondria and your microbiome in the fun facts. And this is all related to your diet and believe it or not, so if you're thinking, hang on, what's my mitochondria and my microbiome? Well, these are the mitochondria, the inner powerhouses of your cell, and the microbiome, all of the bacteria that live inside you and on you. They actually have a very powerful job in terms of your health and well-being and your beauty, brains, and and health. And a lot of scientists are now starting to see that what's happened if we suffer from ill health, what we've done is we've not eaten or lived a lifestyle in accordance with the things that would keep your M&Ms healthy, your mitochondrial microbiome. We affectionately like to call them the M&Ms. And so your microbiome, your gut buddies, and your mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cell, they actually have a lot in common besides the fact that they both actually evolved from ancient bacteria. And so while your gut buddies help you digest the food, okay, so when you think about it, your gut buddies, your microbiome, are involved in helping you digest your food. What you may not realize is that the mitochondria inside your cells actually help you to break down or digest the nutrients that your food provides and supplements provides in order to produce energy. So both of these ancient bacteria are actually involved in the digestion process in one way or another. And so here's the thing. Another fun fact here is that you inherited your gut buddies and your mitochondria from your mother, because all mitochondrial DNA is transmitted through the female egg, so from the mother to the child. And so therefore we could sort of say that all mitochondria in their DNA are female. Likewise, how did we get the microbiome initially? Through traveling down, we were first inoculated with our bacteria through traveling through the birth canal. And so if you were born by cesarean, then you will not have got that initial inoculation from your mother. And so, there can be some impact on your digestion and abilities moving on from there. But here's where the system is even more elegant as far as what your mother did for you. So the mitochondria is all provided through your mother, the microbiome through your mother as well, and then the breast milk was uniquely designed not just to feed you, but to actually feed your gut bacteria. The actual gut bacteria, the actual makeup of the breast milk was differentiated to specifically be able to feed the unique bacteria that were in the mother and therefore you. And that's why we can have because we have very different diets in different parts of the world, we therefore have a different makeup of bacteria. And this is where in our organization we assert that we're all alike, we're all humans, and we all have microbiomes and mitochondria and all that sort of thing, but we've also historically come from many different locations around the world. We have different DNA, so we have different tolerances to different diets. And so we need to keep a lot of that in mind. So it's it is fascinating when we think about nature and how this all works. So in other words, Mum wasn't just feeding you two infants really at once, the newly formed microbiome and you as well. And so that's why some people refer to the microbiome and the mitochondria as a sisterhood. Yeah, your gut buddies and your mitochondria, because they both came from your mother and they're both basically female, they're like sisters. Now, fellas, I won't get into the fact that I guess that means that, we could almost say that women control the world because of all this. But anyway, so your gut buddies report to the sister mitochondria about what's happening in their corner of the house. So when you think about it, they're all reporting and responding to different actions, what you're doing with your diet, what you're doing with your lifestyle. And your mitochondria and microbiome therefore play a prominent role in your health and even how you age. They're really research has shown that the mitochondria plays an important role in the actual aging process. So one study here, in a study conducted at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, when researchers induced, a chromosomal mutation in mice that led to mitochondrial dysfunction, the mice developed wrinkles and extensive visible hair loss in a matter of weeks. So when they damaged the mitochondria, they noticed a rapid aging process. When mitochondrial function was restored, the smooth skin was restored and the hair was restored. So this is the thing. It doesn't matter whether you're wanting to optimize your health, optimize your brain function, or just look good naked. We need to optimize the mitochondria and the microbiome. And look, another fun fact when we really think about this in terms of the microbiome and the mitochondria, new research suggests that mitochondrial damage and whether the damage is repaired is largely dependent on the messages that your mitochondria receive from their sisters living in the gut. So, yep, the sisterhood actually have somewhat of their own social media platform, and they never stop chatting. We know, ladies, how you can gossip and chat amongst yourself. And so, they sure like to gossip and about the good and bad things, I guess, that you're doing with your lifestyle. So, we want that gossiping to, be talking about all the good things you're doing. So the sisterhood in your gut, it's gossiping back to the mitochondria about what's going on. And so hope you're doing the right job. And the great news is that the tips that I'm going to be sharing with you in this particular session and really introducing to the Eat Savvy diet and our wellness programs and all that sort of thing, all of that is designed to look after the girls. All right. So our quick tip, I guess you could sort of say is, the quick tip is to look after the girls inside you. Look after the sisterhood and they will look after you. They'll slow aging and they'll help you prevent illness. So what's the best diet to prevent and heal mitochondrial disease and look after the microbiome? And that's really what we're going to be talking about in this particular session. But in summary, whole foods, organic vegetables, healthy sources of proteins, and research shows mostly from animal sources as well, because it's concentrated. Good fats, no refined sugars or processed foods. Okay, improving your mitochondria and microbiome can really create some pretty miraculous recovery. So looking after them just makes such a big deal. But some of the things, we'll be talking mostly about food, but what are some of the supplements to help your M&Ms? Antioxidants, essential fatty acids, coenzyme Q10, things like curcumin, and the liver herbs like St. Mary's thistle really helps too. Green superfoods, probiotics, prebiotics, trace minerals. So if you've ever done some of our programs and looked at some of our information, such as our Running on Empty web class, for example, or looked at our Savvy 90 plan where we talk about the 90 nutrients there, you'll start to hear some of those things are what a part of the Savvy 90 plan. Yeah, that's right. Because if we eat properly and optimize our nutrition, we look after so much about our body and we can really reach that high level of wellness that we're looking for. Doing a periodical detox helps your mitochondria and your microbiome. So, you'll definitely want to consider whether there are other lifestyle factors that are impacting the sisterhood. Here are some of the things that I was just listing down that can really help the sisterhood. It's turned into more of an extensive quick tip, but the quick tip is do whatever you can to look after that sisterhood, look after the girls. Safety conscious personal care, home care products, getting rid of any exposure to toxins are really important for the sisterhood. Organic vegetables, grass-fed meat, wild-caught fish, those sorts of things being free of pesticides, antibiotics, chemicals, toxins, and all of those sorts of things. A glyphosate, for example, which is sprayed heavily on grain crops and GMO crops, is heavily linked to a myriad of disorders, from diabetes to obesity to cancer rates to Alzheimer's to ADHD to so many things. Very distinct linkages. Okay, so And, like even if you're not eating organic, if you give up packaged foods and grains and sugars, which we'll get into, then and vegetable seed oils, you're actually going to eliminate most, and GMO crops, you'll eliminate most of what glyphosate is sprayed on. So you'll dramatically reduce your load. So keep your environment as clean as possible. So so clean water is really good. Cleaning up your home in terms of not about dirt necessarily. Dust isn't necessarily a problem, but molds, that can be a real problem. Quality sleep can make a difference to your M&Ms. Meditation and stress reduction can make a difference to your M&Ms. And exercise can really make a huge difference as well. So there you have it. Lots of different things you can do to optimize your M&M function, really look after the sisterhood. So you have just joined us here for the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show. It's Corey Sievers here, and I'm your host. Looking forward to sharing with you the topic of foods that heal and foods that kill, and how to eat in order to program your body for health, brains, and beauty. So we like to say here in the Savvy team, for your best wellness journey, you'll need a plan. You'll need some solutions, you'll need guidance, and you'll need community. And we get it, that it's hard. It can be confusing, when you go out there and try to put all this information together. And really, if you do find a great doctor and practitioner, they don't have time to educate and support you. And that's why community support helps. So I would like to say well done for investing the time to have a look at this info. It shows that you are someone special because, you're willing to invest time in your wellness journey. So if you do want to cut through all the confusion and have a guiding hand in the process of achieving wellness, then we can help. Definitely become part of our community today. So the right diet. What is the right diet? Well, let's look at a few things. The Japanese, they eat very little fat and they suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than us. Some of the leading killers, heart attacks and cancers being some of the leading killers in the Western world. Well, the Mexicans, they eat a lot of fat and they suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than us. The Chinese drink very little red wine and they suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than us. And the Italians, well, they drink excessive amounts of red wine, we could say, and suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than us. Well, the Eskimos, they eat more fat than anyone else and they suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than us. And the French eat more fat and drink excessive amounts of red wine and they suffer fewer heart attacks and cancers than those in Australia, America, and Great Britain. So, what's the possible conclusion? Well, we could say that eat and drink what you like because it must be speaking English that's the problem here. Well, we could get that, and that's the problem with correlation studies versus causation. Correlation is no guarantee of causation. So this is where a lot of studies, if you don't understand, a lot of studies can bamboozle the average person because they're purported to be professional studies and everything, but they might be epidemiological studies, which just means that they asked a bunch of people, hey, what do you eat? And what are the diseases that you have? Like, what did you eat last year at this time? You go, I don't know. I can't even remember what I ate last week. Exactly. And so that's one of the problems with these studies. And then just because it's a correlation doesn't mean it's a causation. So we look at all of that, and it's not speaking English, obviously, but what we have to think about are what are some of the things that we all do in America, Australia, and Great Britain that some of these cultures don't do. Interesting. What are some of the similarities? What's the thin thread that combines those sorts of things? Now, we can't guarantee that that will really help us, but we can actually, we can make some educated guesses, really, to stack the odds in our favor. One thing we know for certain is many of those countries eat less packaged food than we do in Australia, America, and Great Britain. So less processed, empty calories. Many of those cultures actually have better meal times. They have more mindful eating practices than we do. So that's a clue. Maybe that's good for stress reduction and the mitochondria and the microbiome. So we could take that on. A lot of the other thing too is each of those cultures may actually be eating more in alignment with their history, with their biology, with where they came from. Because when we think about, and I've never seen this anywhere else, but I'm just really sharing this opinion with you, that when we really think about Australia, are most Australians from Australia? No. What about America? Are most Americans from that region of the world? No. What about Great Britain? Well, maybe, but probably from all around. So again, are we as cultures, if we're multicultural cultures, are we all trying to eat the same diet and it's not optimizing our own genetic heritage? That's one of the things that I would assert. And so we really have to be willing to understand that we're all alike and yet we are all different. So that's why we can't follow to the letter some dietary guideline that's been given to us by the government. We actually have to think about things and actually pay attention to our own bodies and how it's responding to foods. Okay? And so what we do with the Eat Savvy diet is we really try to look at all the thin threads and we present to you the best available evidence for you to optimize your diet. From there, you then tweak based on your own individualities. And so if you're not having regular blood testing or something, we offer things such as our bioinfluence analysis hair testing to help you optimize. But otherwise, there are some things that you can do just by knowing, for example, your blood type. And many experts sort of put down the blood typing type of diet. We'll get into this. I'm just setting the scene really here. But I do believe that's one of the easiest ways of us discovering how we can be different to each other. And so we've seen people, in the same family, eating the same diet. Some are healthy and some are not, because they actually have different heritages because of the two parents. So, we actually sometimes do need to, might not be helpful at mealtime, but sometimes we need to focus on the things that optimize our own physiology, not just what we think is right. And that's the problem with much of the evidence that you're being told through the system. You're being told that this is the best for everyone. And yet we're all different. So it's very easy for you to be confused when you think about all of the things that you're being told. Eggs are bad for you, right? Wait, hang on. Eggs are good for you. Fat is bad. Hang on, wait. Fat's good for you, but carbs are bad. Skipping breakfast causes weight gain. Hang on, wait. Skipping breakfast, otherwise known as intermittent fasting nowadays, is great for weight loss and metabolic health and even longevity. It's enough to pretty much make you crazy, right? Well, these are just a few of the contradictory nutritional claims that have been made in the media over the last decade. And so it's no wonder that you might be confused about this and where to go. So everyone has an opinion on the optimal human diet, from your personal trainer to your hairdresser, from your nutritionist to your doctor, and they're all convinced that they're right. Even the experts disagree. And they can all point to at least some studies to support their view. You could assert just like I'm going to do. But on the surface, some of these studies seem credible. They're published in peer-reviewed journals. They come out of respected institutions. But I've seen some big issues with these so-called evidence-based studies. Okay, the problem with any study is that the goal of the study is to isolate one thing. All studies, whether it be a drug study or a nutrition study or a diet study, they're often looking for the one thing to isolate. And yet we don't live in a world where we can isolate those things. And so we can learn from these studies, but we then have to, it takes a bit of interpretation and to be able to, determine how that works for us. So I guess the question is, are you open-minded about the things that can help you live a long and healthy life? Or are you more of a fixed mindset? That's the question that I have here right up front when we're getting underway here and really talking about some of these topics and everything. Because, when I was in my early 20s, I went vegetarian by choice due to lessons. I became involved in the healing field, and what we found is that for those who were severely toxic, because we assert that, basically, the problems with disease is we have two, the negative bioinfluences, including toxicity, has risen over the years, and the positive bioinfluences, as far as nutrition and all the goodness in our diet, has gone down. So we have a mismatch, really, of the positive and negative bioinfluences. So what we need to do to improve your health is increase the positive bioinfluences and decrease the negative ones. Well, one of the things that we found in those working with my original mentor in the health and healing field, is that most of the people who were sick were also toxic. So we had to put them onto more of a cleansing type of diet, which was more of a vegetarian type of diet. Whereas, and one of the things that we discovered, though, is that didn't necessarily build health; it cleansed. And so what happened for me is I got somewhat stuck in that belief that vegetarianism was the best way, because I could quote all of the things that I'll actually theoretically debunk in this session. So, I admit I made a mistake with my own health through having the blinkers on and not understanding the differences in our biophysiology and everything. And so it's true that some people can do very well as a vegetarian, but I was not one of them based on my heritage and my blood type and all that sort of thing. So there's no use beating there's no use going after it, doing the same thing, hoping for a different result. We have to do it for health. Now, some people are vegetarian for humane reasons, so let's just put that totally aside. I won't even get into that argument today. I had to make the change based on health, because my health was declining in my 20s because I was vegetarian. And because I thought from my experience working with sick people that was therefore the best thing for me. And so I was wrong. So, everyone, I do believe that experts, we all do the best that we can do. No one's trying to lead. I was about to say no one's trying to lead you astray. Most people aren't. Okay? Most of the experts are doing what they really feel is best. But there is definitely some hidden agendas out there. Anyway, let's not turn this show into a political show. So, out there's massive confusion in the general public as well as health professionals about what's the best diet, because a lot of the studies conflict. And unfortunately, millions of dollars and decades of research hasn't added any clarity to the whole mix of things. In fact, it's probably made it a bit worse. And what we're going to be really looking at in this particular session is the fact that we've in essence been asking the wrong questions. And so we've been getting the effective answers, but they've been the answers to the wrong questions. So, hopefully we can only really scratch the surface of it today, but that's what we really want to chat about in this particular session. And, part of it is hindsight's always 20/20. So it's easy to look back and go, that's what went wrong. But when we're trying to predict the future and look to the best thing that we can do for our own health, it's really hard. So all we can do is step back, take a look at the whole situation, including ancestral health, archaeology, anthropology, evolutionary biology, physiology, biochemistry, and nutritional research, and sort of look at it as a big picture, and then go, what's the best available evidence that we have right now? So what I'm hoping to share with you is the best available evidence that I've come across as to how you can need to reprogram your genetics for health, brains, and beauty. And then, you tweak it from there. In 20 years' time, we might go, that piece wasn't quite right, or that piece wasn't quite right. But hindsight's always 20/20. All we can do is move forward with the best available evidence. And what I see today is that when we look back, there are some primary things that really led us astray, especially in the pre-war, post-war era. Massive changes, and I hope to present to you some of that information here. But all right, so if you're confused about diet, we get it, okay? We absolutely get it. It's not hard to be confused about diet. So, is there a perfect diet? Let's start with the question on everyone's mind here. What's the perfect diet? What's the optimal human diet? Well, a drum roll, please. I don't believe there is one. Emphasis on one. Okay, there's no way to answer the question, what's the optimal human diet, because there's no single optimal diet for every human. And so, ladies, you get it if we're dealing with your hair. You need to use the right tool to get the right results. This device, what is it? Maybe you want to write it in, even if you're watching the replay or whatever. This, and if you're catching the podcast version, then what we have pictured on screen is a straightening wand, a hair straightening wand. Well, it looks very similar as far as the device goes to a hair curling iron. And yet they do very different jobs. And you go, hang on, are you telling us that we're all so different that some of us have curly hair and we want to straighten it, and others have straight hair and we want to curl it? What gives? So are we really all biologically unique and yet we're human? Indeed we are. The right tool gives you the right results. So gents, we have a drill. Now, a drill might look very similar to this glue gun, but they do different jobs, don't they? So we need to look at the right tool to get the right results. And that's why we have different programs here in the Savvy team, because, everybody has different health and wellness goals. Yet there are some fundamentals that we can take care of, because we are all very similar. Our microbiome and our mitochondria are very similar. So if we look after them in the similar ways, they will look after us. But we do have some unique variances, and so therefore some of us do better than others with different diets. And ladies, you also know this very well when you think about body shape. How can we all have different body shapes? Well, because it's based on genetics, hormones, activity levels, epigenetics. So we have these different body shapes. Similarly, we all have different skin tones. And so we all have different skin tones. That just shows also we're all unique in where we came from and our ability to withstand exposure to the sun, because the melanin in our skin is different. That also means that, if you're dark-skinned and you move to a cold country, you will be deficient in vitamin D, because you need to be out in the sun to be absorbing the vitamin D. So you'll have to eat more vitamin D-rich foods. Now, that also means that if you are fair-skinned coming from a colder climate where you may have eaten a lot of animal foods historically that had vitamin D in them, and you come to an equatorial or warm sort of country, then you can't be out in the sun all day or you'll fry to a crisp. So if you stay out of the sun, you also are vitamin D deficient. So, when we're not operating based on our genetics and based on optimizing our own body systems, then disease develops. So we have to understand, where did we come from and where are we living right now? So, so we all have different energy needs as well, based on all of the, our activity level and all that sort of thing. So what do I eat, you say? Well, that's why we put together the Eat Savvy diet. This is the best available evidence that we have compiled from many research-based dietary philosophies and put it all into one sort of ever-changing spectrum, so that this is something that your whole family can follow to boost energy, improve your mental clarity, detox your body, shed excess fat, reduce your allergies, and improve your skin health, and more. All of these sorts of things. So we put it together as a guide to help our community members. Now, there's no doubt that we could attract more attention in the marketplace if we jumped on the fads. But instead, what we're actually looking to do for our community members is what are the thin threads that actually go through all of these fads. So right now, at time of recording, the latest fads are things like, some of them are fads, some of them are also based on some good evolutionary biology. But right now, the vegan and plant-based food movement is huge. And yet also, the ketogenic diet is huge. And yet now we're seeing a huge increase in awareness around what's called the carnivore diet. And also we're seeing intermittent fasting being a big thing. And it's like, okay, a lot of people jump on this in a fad-like behavior. And yet what we do, as I said, we could sell books, we could promote things better if we jumped onto the fad and told you about the latest fad, because that's what everyone else is talking about. But what we do here in the Savvy team, because we're here for the long haul to help you reach a high level of wellness, is we look for, hang on, what can we all agree upon? What can we all agree upon? And how do we, with all of these books that we've read, how do we piece it together? And one of the things that the blessing that I learned when I was in my early 20s working with my original mentor in the health and healing field is that he said, if you don't believe something, or something, it just doesn't make any sense to you, don't discount it. He said, put it on the shelf. And so what that means is it's just like a bit of an idea shelf, or a mental shelf, like, I don't believe that, but let me not just discount that. Let me go put that on the shelf for later use. And that really set me up so well, because it's meant that many of the things that I'm telling you, it's freaky sometimes, many of the things that I learned back then, nearly 30 years ago, I'm actually starting to go, ooh, that's now being proven. And so I didn't discount it. I kept it in mind. I put it on the shelf as such. So, yeah. So anyway, keep that mind open. All right. So when we look at what we're doing here with the Eat Savvy diet, it's a very simple philosophy. You know that there are some foods that are not savvy. They're the things that you want to avoid. There's also some patterns of eating that aren't so good either. And then there are some foods that we know are good for us, and you want to eat those sorts of things. The trick is that there isn't a good or a bad. There isn't an in or an out. It's actually a sliding scale. So what we've done is do the best that we can to put things on a sliding scale. So there's not a you should never eat that, but understand that if you're eating the foods in the avoid category, the not savvy foods, that you're not taking your health to a higher level. Whereas if you're eating in the savvy area, you're taking your health to a higher level. So when we look at our, that we share our little emoticon man here in the Wellness It's Not That Hard, it's easy to understand in this essence that we don't just get sick one day. We're not like sick one day, healthy one day, sick the next. It was a degenerative process. And we assert really that we can look at the same sort of thing with our diet, that if we stack the diet on the savvy side of the spectrum, then at least 80-20, then we will move towards a high level of wellness, or at least stop ourselves from degenerating. Whereas if we tend to stack our diet on the not savvy side of things, we are sending ourselves towards disease and disability and an early death perhaps. So it's actually very simple, but it's not cut and dry. And that's why we are always adjusting and everything. So most diets will focus on calories and macros if you get out there. That's why we still got all this argument about, is it ketogenic, or is it more carnivore, or is it, should we be eating more of a whole grain based diet? Because they're all focusing on calories and macros. Macros being fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Okay, and so that's the issue. Whereas the Eat Savvy diet puts more of the attention on the micros and the toxins. So, and correcting the macronutrient choices, but it's more on the nutrients we get from the food. Now, yes, we still have some beliefs around the macro side of things, but we want to look to get the most nutrient-dense foods that we can. So through our diet, we are looking to decrease man-made and natural toxins, because many plants contain their own defense mechanisms that are toxic to our body. And some people are more sensitive than others. And so there's no use saying, well, I don't know why I can't eat that food. If you can't eat that food, you can't eat that food. It's a toxin for you, right? And then we want to make sure that we're increasing the micronutrients that we're getting through our diet as well as supplementation. So obviously here we then need to address things such as food sensitivity. Some people do have unique food sensitivities, and we can find that out by all sorts of different ways. Our bioinfluence report hair test technology can give you some of those sensitivities. You can have blood tests to get more accurate things. You can have the allergy tests where they do skin prick tests. You can even do a pulse test. Dr. Coker came up with a pulse test that he said that your pulse, if you've eaten something that you're intolerant to, your pulse after a meal will raise around about 15 beats a minute. So you can get a baseline and then actually test your pulse and go, wow, well, there's something in that meal that didn't do me very well, didn't do me good. But, look, if you want to simplify it, begin with the Eat Savvy approach. Okay, just really begin with the Eat Savvy approach and then tweak it from there. And so when you do follow the Eat Savvy approach, you will reduce toxins and allergens in your diet. You'll reduce anti-nutrients. You'll increase your micronutrient profile, but you'll also improve your macronutrient profile. You'll tend to reduce your body inflammation, and inflammation is linked to, really the root cause of most diseases today. You'll improve your M&M function. So we like to say that that if you follow the lyrics of Johnny Mercer in this song that you've probably heard, especially if you're old enough here, you've got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch onto the affirmative, and don't mess with Mr. In-Between. And, that makes sense if you have a look at the if you actually have a look at the Eat Savvy diet spectrum, that makes sense. But isolated, it may not make sense. But look, the question here, when we look at these trends and everything, where are you headed with your health? Love this story of the processionary caterpillar. The processionary caterpillar will follow the caterpillar in front blindly in search of food, assuming that the one in front knows where it's going. And so I just want to ask you, are you following dietary advice blindly without really thinking? And the evidence, I'm not necessarily trying to persuade you to follow any particular advice, but to start to think and to start to, move towards the thin threads, the practices that we do know optimize our health and lifestyle. So some of the current dietary trends, as I mentioned, keto, paleo, carnivore, vegan, they're all different. What can we learn from all of these sorts of things? So our differences do matter. The differences in our gene, in our behavior, our lifestyle, our microbiome, they do make a difference. For example, let's just look at people with lactase, the ability to still digest lactose in milk. It's a genetic adaptation. So they can handle the sugars in milk, whereas others can't. So there's no use saying, well, I can't do that, just you're intolerant to that. So your physiology is not prepped to digest that. That's not to say that you have to eliminate all dairy, because dairy can be a rich source of nutrients, but you certainly wouldn't go for the low-fat skim milk craze. because then that's just higher in lactose. So that's a unique change. You adapt to that, and that will optimize your own physiology. Changes in your gut microbiome can change with with your history and with your diet. Studies of Japanese people have found, for example, that they have a lot more enzymes in their system to be able to break down seaweed. Otherwise, it tends to be difficult for people. So this is a challenge. People go, well, the Japanese, they eat lots of seaweed, so I should eat lots of seaweed. And then they don't do that well with that because we haven't necessarily adapted to that. Organ meats and shellfish are extremely nutrient dense and a great choice for many people. But if you have hemochromatosis, then which is you tend to aggressively store iron, then these are sources of iron, these are rich in iron, so that wouldn't be a good idea for you. So we all have these unique patterns that we have to work with. But when we look at it, large controlled studies involving hundreds of thousands of people have found that on average, higher intakes of saturated fat are not associated with a higher risk of heart disease, like we've been told for more than 60 years. But it is true that people with certain, let's say, genetic mutations where they're hyperabsorbers of saturated fat, they do have problems in that area. And so now, fortunately, we're starting to see a lot more testing. There's genetic tests that you can do to find these sorts of things, but really, you can really go down that biohacking, side of things and optimize based on your genetics, gene testing, blood testing, constant, all that sort of thing. But what we find is that most people do well if they follow the Eat Savvy diet, and then we tweak it from there, and we can do very inexpensive and simple hair analysis testing in order to be able to optimize you. And from there, you can always have all the blood tests and allergy tests and, inflammation testing and then gene testing and all that sort of thing if you then want to tweak further from there. But let's start with the basics. So when we really look at it, that's what we do know. Here's the thing, when we really think about it, nutrition research the error has been that they believed when they started to look at the calories model, it became that a carbohydrate, like a calorie is a calorie, it doesn't matter where it comes from. Then it became like a carbohydrate from any source is the same. A fat from any source is the same. A protein is the same. And yet when you really start to look at it, that is not the truth. And so we can pretty much agree, but that's the problem with dietary philosophies right now. So let's say that a person got 50% of their calories from, as far as fat calories goes, from donuts, pizza, chocolate, and other fast food. And another person got 50% of their calories, from fat, from whole meats, grass-fed, ocean-caught, fish, for example, avocados, nuts, and seeds. So let's say their macronutrients were the same, but one person came from deep-fried donuts and the other person came from, grass-fed meats. That's the problem with most nutrition science out there. It's not looking at the micronutrient density, it's looking at the macronutrient profile. Macronutrients being carbs, fat, protein, micronutrients being all of the amino acids, trace minerals, vitamins, antioxidants that are in the food. So in the Eat Savvy diet, we're more focused on micronutrient and not just what's in the food, but what you absorb. One of the misnomers is, let's say, brown rice. Brown rice is higher in nutrients than white rice. Okay, great. When you take the rice and you grind it up and analyze it, that's true. When it gets into your body, it reacts differently. Brown rice has additional anti-nutrients that block absorption of nutrients. So the brown rice actually blocks not only the absorption of the nutrients in the rice, but also the rest of the food that's in your stomach. So this is the challenge. So, and you'll still find that across the board, that recommended across the board by nutritionists, because they're not thinking. They're not thinking about what happens when it's inside our body. They're just thinking about comparing the grains of rice. This one has more than this. But things work differently inside us. And so that's what we've really got to look at. So that's the biggest problem with nutritional studies. And believe it or not, this still goes on. It astounds me. This still goes on with seemingly intelligent people. Anyway, let's not go there. So, I do see that the tide's turning. We are starting to see that that people are starting to become more aware of this. So, really, the Eat Savvy diet is about decreasing those negative bioinfluences and increasing the positive ones. Now, I love this concept of the parable of the blind men and the elephant. Now, the parable is designed to sort of illustrate how biases can blind us, preventing us from seeing a complete understanding of the nature of things. So it's sort of used as a warning against the promotion of an absolute truth. And that's really the challenge that I have with all diets, that the story of the blind men, it sort of came from India, where it's then been widely spread, and it's sort of about the vantage point. And so when you look at it, the blind men they're put on one part of the elephant, and so they can't see, all they can do is feel. So one blind man may say, well, an elephant is like a big snake because it's got a hold of the trunk. No, an elephant is like a tree stump because he has a hold of the foot, the leg. And another blind man might say, hang on, what are you all saying? An elephant is like a sheath of leather because he has a hold of the ear. And then another one says, you're all wrong. It's actually like a little furry mouse because he has a hold of just the end of the tail. So I don't think the experts intend to lead you astray in most cases, but we just can't avoid the biases. And the fact that in science, we tend to try to, science tries to isolate and look at the one thing. Historically, it's about what's the one thing. And, whether it's religion or diet, there's usually some things that we can come to agree upon. And if we actually zoom out and don't just hold on to the one piece that we've got a hold of, we can actually see some similarities. And we can agree on some similarities. And so that's what the Eat Savvy diet is really about, to do the best that we can to agree on some similarities. And so one thing that we do know across the board, it doesn't matter whether you're following a keto diet, a carnivore diet, a paleo diet, a vegan diet, a vegetarian diet, or whatever. Pretty much what all of these diets do agree upon is that packaged, processed, adulterated food is not good for us. So let's go. That's one thing we can all agree on. And this is the thing that we need to look at when we're looking at foods that heal and foods that kill. There are some things that we definitely know. And so the best available evidence is that we should all be limiting packaged foods, the created foods. Okay, so not as in packaged foods like some of the stupid things that we see on the internet, which is pretty stupid, like a potato. Someone was sharing the other day a sweet potato that was wrapped up in plastic on a plastic tray. And that's all just so we can put barcodes on to scan things. It's stupid, but that's not a packaged food, even though it's been packaged. What we mean is a created food. Most created foods are made from things such as sugar, colors and flavors, grain products of some sort, and hydrogenated or vegetable oils. And each and every one of those things are damaging to our body. They're damaging to the mitochondria, they're damaging to the microbiome, and they create inflammation. So we can all, no matter what diet you're following, we can pretty much all agree on those things, that it's best to avoid that. So let's look at the, this whole concept of foods that heal and foods that kill. You might go, but aren't there some foods that are better and some foods that aren't? And, is there really a one-size-fits-all? Well, as I was saying, we can all agree that diets, chips, chocolate, soft drink, processed foods, refined foods, they're not really good for us, even if we like them and they're tasty. Okay? And most people can agree that it makes logical sense that a diet that's unprocessed, filled with whole foods, is healthier. And so when we look at it from the point of view of like this sort of thing, there was even a study where a teenager went partially blind because he pretty much just ate Pringles, fries, ham, sausage, and all that sort of thing. So no real, he was a fussy eater and he wouldn't eat proper whole foods. Okay, so we can agree that it's a good idea for us to eat more natural foods. I think one of the biggest problems, though, is we see this sort of thing. Even this is just going out there, even in terms of cartoons being spread around. That I thought this was funny when doctors have nightmares, and then this giant bottle of vitamins was chasing me, threatening to steal my patients. I don't think we'll ever see a situation where, really doctors' livelihood is threatened here. There's always going to be people who don't make the necessary changes, and so their health degenerates, and then they need support from the medical profession. And that's where we're really set up very well, that our Western systems certainly are great for helping us when we have let our bodies degenerate and get a disease, but they're not well set up for prevention. Okay, I think we can pretty much agree with that. They're not built for prevention. So prevention is in our own hands. That's really what we've got to look at. And that's why we're doing this particular session, to help you out. So, when we look at it, when we start to get into it, we can agree that it's, that packaged food and processed food and heavily adulterated food is not good for us, whereas whole foods are good. It's where we get into this middle ground that we get into trouble. Is meat good or bad? Does that apply to all meats? What about just processed meat? Is saturated fat bad? Should humans consume dairy? What's the optimal human diet? More specifically, what helps us to optimize our health and well-being? Well, in theory, if we zoom back out and we look at evolutionary biology, archaeology, medical anthropology, comparative anatomy and physiology, then we can actually look at historically what we've been, generally, what we've adapted to eating. And then we can look at the biochemical perspective as well. And I think what's happening today is there's too much focus on biochemical studies, one thing at a time, rather than looking, at, holistically again. So from an evolutionary perspective, human beings, like other animals, we evolved in a particular environment, and that evolutionary process then dictated our nutritional needs. So they've done isotope analysis from archaeological studies and found that really we have been consuming meat, and even, yes, cooking meat for millions of years. So it even dates back even further than that, and that many people assert, for example, that chimps are actually vegetarian, or apes are vegetarian, and yet when they really research it well, they're eating bugs and vertebrates and all that sort of thing. And then there's so much that we can really look at when we actually get rid of our biases and look at the anatomical evidence. The structure of our digestive tract tells us a lot about our diet. Okay, so the greatest portion of our gut volume is more in our small intestines, whereas the greatest portion of many of our primitive sort of relatives, I guess, is more in the large intestine, which is good for breaking down fiber and seeds and the hard to digest foods. So this is the microbiome digesting things, and this is why many of the grass-eating animals, cows and all that sort of thing, have multiple stomachs for really getting more out of the food, whereas we don't have that same physiology. The other thing that we can look at is that we have a very acidic stomach, or we're supposed to have, and so therefore, that is more aligned with eating meat. So there's lots that we can really look at there, and so that may be sort of against many people's beliefs about cruelty and all this thing, but I do believe that we have evolved, most of us, to be able to eat meat and vegetation. So therefore, we are naturally omnivores. Some of us are more carnivore than omnivore, but very really there isn't anyone that is truly able, as a human, able to get everything that they need from pure vegetables. Okay, so based on historical looking at bones and fossil evidence and all of these sorts of things, as well as some more recent studies and understanding how, like if researchers, for example, Dr. Michael Eads has looked at lots of the research around this, and he sort of says that many people say that we, because we had a larger brain, we actually became able to hunt, and because our brain became larger, we then became meat eaters, for example. But he asserts that the research he's seen is that our brain evolved and became larger because we started eating meats, the denser food. So we actually adapted over millions of years to eat denser foods, and so we became smarter as a result. So let's just take it away from, anthropology and then look maybe at, I love what Dr. Kate Shanahan came up with deep nutrition. She asserts that there is one human diet that provides optimal nutrition for our race. And so what she looked at is much of the research that we quote here in the Savvy Team too, looking at Dr. Weston Price and all these sorts of things. But she also looked at who were some of the original nutritionists, and she asserts that chefs are the original nutritionists amongst us. And looking all around the world, she said there's not too many chefs that really eliminated all parts of the animal and all those sorts of things. So the human diet is not along a long list of acceptable or forbidden foods, but it's rather a set of strategies. And she asserts that it's 4 strategies. And the best chefs in the world have always employed all 4 strategies. So we should then start to look at what that is. And so she says the best chefs in the world have all looked at things such as meat on the bone. Okay? Fermented and sprouted foods. Organ and other nasty bits, and fresh, unadulterated plant and animal products. So even if we were to go, right, hang on, what's the, we were talking here about what can we all agree upon? So let's just say for those of you who are vegan and vegetarian and everything, you go, no, I don't believe that. Well, what we can agree on, right, is at least 0.4, fresh, unadulterated foods. Okay, we are traditionally meant to be eating. You can also agree fermented and sprouted foods, many vegans can agree upon. So what we're actually dealing with here, if we look historically, then okay, well, nevertheless, if you are following a vegetarian or vegan diet, then you still should be avoiding all packaged foods and focusing more on whole foods and supplementation. If you're following an omnivorous diet, then we should be eating all of these sorts of things, but recognizing that just eating a steak, we're ignoring the benefit of the meat on the bone and the other nutrition that comes from that. And then we've got all the organs and nasty bits, which is some of the richest and densest of foods according to Dr. Weston Price. So it's interesting that Dr. Ken Berry asserts that we have been misled. And I think it's very interesting when we start to see these sorts of doctors like Dr. Berry coming out here, in that he says that he wrote, when he wrote the book Lies My Doctor Told Me, he toyed with the word myth, and he decided as a doctor very clearly that it should be called Lies My Doctor Told Me, because what he asserts is that it doesn't matter what your hairdresser says. Oh, I've heard that, you should be vegan, or I've heard that you should be carnivore, or I've heard that the ketogenic diet is the best. He asserts that it's irrelevant what your friends, what your family, what your community sort of, we can all share information amongst each other. But the reason he called this book Lies is because he asserts that if you are a practitioner, that you must be up to date with the latest evidence. So he says that they have that practitioners, dietitians, and doctors have a fiduciary responsibility to be giving the correct advice, not just based on flawed scientific studies. So, interesting book. But what he asserts is that the first 3 steps to fix your diet, it's very, very easy. Get rid of sugars of all kinds, especially for diabetics. Get rid of all grains. Get rid of all inflammatory vegetable oils. Okay, so what I think is just great about that is that that's exactly what we believe and have been teaching for some time. So we are so excited to see more and more medical professionals jumping on board this holistic wellness philosophy, really. So, I guess I feel as though doctors and practitioners are also bound. It's interesting that he asserts what he asserts. This is Dr. Berry, because I've sort of found that, it's very hard for doctors such as himself to step outside the boundaries of the traditional dogma and swim upstream, really. So I congratulate all of those doctors, practitioners out there who are doing just that, looking at the latest evidence and questioning things and not just being blinded by what they've been taught. So get rid of sugars. That's a food that kills, in essence, when you really look at the evidence. Get rid of grains. Get rid of inflammatory vegetable oils. Pretty simple. So, so let's just take a little bit of a trip back in time. So, if you've seen the movie Back to the Future here, let's just jump in the time machine and go back in time. So forgetting the studies and all that sort of thing and not even looking at anthropological stuff, what are some of the things that have been found out? Well, we love the material that was discovered by Dr. Weston Price. Now, he's considered the Isaac Newton of nutrition, so really making some important discoveries. And in 1939, he wrote Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And what he saw is that no matter what culture he found around the world, and he jumped on a boat, traveled around, and he saw cultures in their actual pristine environments and compared those in their pristine indigenous environments to those of the same culture that had adopted Western patterns of eating. And he believed that it was the commercially preparing and storing of foods that stripped away the rich vitamins and minerals necessary to prevent disease. So he was actually a dentist, and in search of the causes of dental decay and physical degeneration that he started to see in his dental practice, he turned initially to test tubes and microscopes, and then he went out to really look for these isolated cultures. So in essence, the world became his laboratory. He traveled, he went to isolated groups in Switzerland, Gaelic communities in the Outer Hebrides, Eskimos and the Indians of North America. He went to the Melanesian and Polynesian cultures. So he looked at the different African tribes, Australian Aborigines, the New Zealand Maori, Indians of South America. He went to all of these different places. And what's interesting is when you think about it, what he witnessed is that they all had different diets. And certainly because all of those different regions are very different. The equatorial peoples had different foods to those up in the Arctic Circle and all that sort of thing. But he started to look again. What I respect is he looked for the thin threads. What are the things that we can all learn from this? So when he isolated the foods from these people, what he found is that the food provided at least 4 times the trace minerals and at least 10 times the fat-soluble vitamins from the foods. Okay? So get that. If you've ever been involved with any of our things or looked at our running on empty information, our wellness, it's not that hard. Here was Price found that there were at least 4 times the minerals in the mineral consumption from those who had little disease and dental decay compared to those who had disease and dental decay, and 10 times the vitamin intake. So how does that make you feel when you've been told all you need is a balanced diet and supplementation is a waste of money? Does it make you feel like you've been led astray? Because this evidence has been around for decades and decades. 10 times the amount of fat-soluble vitamins. And that's things such as vitamin A and vitamin D and these sorts of things. So the importance of good nutrition he found also in the research for mothers during pregnancy was well recognized. He found that the indigenous cultures actually had a preconception nutritional program for both parents. And so many tribes required that there was a premarital nutrition, that children were spaced very definitely to permit the mother to maintain her full health and strength, thus assuring that the next generation would be physically excellent. The pregnant or the young couple would be given the special foods, and often special foods given to pregnant and lactating women as well. Both maturing boys and girls were actually fed differently in some cases. And what Price found, that these foods were very rich in minerals, in vitamins A, in vitamins D, and that in each and every culture, these were only found in the animal fats. He actually found also that every culture with multi-generational wellness focused on these same principles. So, do you understand what I mean by that? I mean that those who passed on good genes to their children, in all cases had a diet very rich in nutrition, and in most cases had rich vitamin content from some form of animal product in every culture he found. So in other words, he never found a vegetarian, healthy, multi-generational culture. I'm sorry if I'm looking at the science, I'm looking at wellness. Here in the Savvy team, we're wanting to help you be healthy and well. Now, does that mean that if you really strongly believe in vegetarian and veganism that you can't optimize your well-being? Well, no, you can do some things. Okay, so we don't want to sort of make you feel bad about yourself for anything there. I'm just presenting what Price found. Okay, that it just wasn't in multi-generational wellness. Multi-generational wellness. In other words, passing on good, healthy genes to your children. And this was all early World War II pre-packaged food. So the pre-packaged foods that Price was talking about, sugar and wheat and all that sort of thing, was nothing like what we're now being exposed to. So he put all of that together and put that basically in nutrition and physical degeneration. And he basically found the striking evidence that when a culture abandons natural food consumption and moves towards packaged food consumption, they get dental problems and health problems. Even seeing some people of the same genetics in the same family. Now, one who's eating Western food gets all the dental problems and the other one doesn't. So you can make changes now. It even doesn't matter where you've come from and what your genetics are. You can make changes right now with changing your diet. And Price actually found that you can restore your dental health and avoid dental problems by eating a rich, nutrient-dense diet. Fascinating stuff when you really think about it. But another thing that we can look at is Pottinger's cats. This is a fascinating one too. So we've taken a bit of a step back in time. We've jumped in the time machine and gone back to a time when we may not be able to get these studies. So when we look at the anthropological evidence and everything too, we can look from fossilized things, but we can't. But the sort of study that Price did, going to the actual culture living in their pristine environment, we can't find those environments anymore. And then some of these studies that Pottinger did, for example, with his cats. So Pottinger was his father, and then he were involved in sort of early endocrinology in a way, is the easiest way to put it. And they were doing studies with cats, and people around the environment like heard about this, and they would actually dump the cats at his facility. And so he sort of wondered what to do with all of these, with all of the facility. And he was originally doing, with the studies that he was doing, he was feeding the cats basically scraps from these are all wild stray cats. He was feeding them scraps from the sanitarium and from different places around their food scraps. And with all these other cats, he actually had to source more food. So he got raw meat scraps from butchers and all that sort of thing. So then he decided to start studying, well, hang on, what would happen to these different cats if I fed them a raw diet versus a cooked diet? And so some of them he fed raw milk. So he actually divided up sort of raw meat, cooked meat. And then he even looked at, for example, raw milk, evaporated milk, and sweetened condensed milk. And so when you look at that sort of, even when we just look at those milks, that pretty much mirrors in a lot of ways the sorts of spectrum that we're being exposed to. Really healthy raw stuff, sort of cooked and adulterated dairy, and then packaged, sweetened, and really what's the thing? Well, obviously, he actually found that the cats on a full sweetened condensed milk and all cooked diet, they weren't able to even, when thrown across the room or whatever, they weren't even able to land on their feet properly. Next generations were born with bone deformations and more prevalence to ulcerations on their eyes and all of these sorts of things. And so he found that cats it would take 3 generations and their health would degenerate substantially on that actual cooked, purely processed food diet. And then it took about 4 generations for him to get the cats back to health on the subsequent generations by eating more of the healthy food diet. Interesting. So he really recognized that what his studies show us is that obviously the less packaged food that we eat, the better. And also the more rich and dense and nutritious our food is, the better. Cats need different nutrition to us. And so what he found, though, is that when cats thrived on a 50-50 diet, 50% of the packaged and cooked and 50% raw. Okay, and so, but if it went down to 70% cooked and processed and 30% raw, they struggled. And then it was all processed and cooked and all that sort of thing, they degenerated. So we can learn from that. What if we were to eat? Let's just go, okay, what if we were to eat a 50-50 diet? Could we thrive? What if we were to eat more healthy, really, really decrease the packaged foods and all that sort of thing, like we assert on the Eat Savvy diet? Could we thrive even more? Could we be like Pottinger's cats and end up able to land on our feet? And well, he even saw that the cats fed the processed diet, their behavior changed. They became timid. And in subsequent generations, they became disinterested in reproduction and unable to reproduce. How does that apply to the difficulty in many people falling pregnant nowadays? The difficulty that we're having. Could it be like Pottinger's cats, that people are just eating the wrong diet and too much processed foods? That's what this is really all about. So let's just take a little bit of a look at a couple of videos here. What I want to introduce you to here is a little bit of a clip from a video called The Perfect Human Diet. A little bit of food for thought here for you. We're getting there. Okay.
It's tragic when you see some of the compounding factors of obesity, how it shortens lives, how it decreases the quality of life.
I've got children who haven't even hit puberty yet, and they've got type 2 diabetes.
27 million Americans, as of 2004, have metabolic syndrome. It's a huge, huge worldwide problem.
The confusion for most Americans is that we see and hear so much contradictory advice that we don't really understand what to eat for optimal health.
The public is confused because what the media and special interest groups and large corporations selling foods, etc., would like you to currently believe is a fact keeps on being changed.
Fructose is the cause of the current epidemic.
Mother Nature gave us fructose.
Cut down on processed meats.
Whole grain cereal.
Whole grain with omega-3.
I'm a vegetarian.
I'm vegan.
Whole wheat pasta with meat sauce.
Beef is bad, soy is good.
Absolutely.
The longest running and most comprehensive and the largest number of people in the actual group of research that has ever been done on the human diet is called The History of the World.
Evolution by natural selection is the most powerful idea in all of medicine and biology. Our nutritional requirements are shaped by our evolution.
I study bone chemistry as a way of getting at what the diets of people and animals were in the past.
These people were now becoming more and more meat eaters. If we had stayed as vegetarians, I wouldn't be speaking to you on this particular high level.
The original diet that kept us healthy for generation after generation after generation, that because we're not eating anymore, we're not healthy.
We are so far off base from what we are genetically programmed to eat.
We have smaller brains as a result of eating grains. We have more scrunched up noses we can't breathe through.
Do I think we can find our way out of the obesity epidemic? I mean, the techniques are there to get us out of it, whether people choose to adopt those.
We've made a lot of mistakes here, and hopefully we can turn this around.
Yeah, and I just hope that it gives you a little bit of an idea of things. And what I want to do is really share with you the some of the steps to get started on the Eat Savvy diet. Now, we actually have a 12 steps blog post, so 12 steps to help you get started on the Eat Savvy diet. But as I said before, it's a very simple philosophy where it's a spectrum. So let's take you through some of the things. And number one, I think you've got it from what I already said. Skip sugar. Okay, so technically sugar is vegan, right? So, you know, again, but even a vegan can and a vegetarian can agree nowadays that we're eating too much sugar. So sugar comes in many hidden forms, and this is a big issue. Even I've shared in other programs that John Yudkin was a British physiologist and nutritionist, and he wrote books recommending a low carb diet for weight loss. And yet he gained a bit of a reputation for his book Pure, White and Deadly. But the interesting thing is that when it was published, he published it for the lay person, so for everyday readers and everything. But the scientific community, because it had jumped onto the saturated fat bandwagon and saying fat is bad, they basically vilified him. They destroyed his entire reputation. Not only that, but we've even seen that evidence has come out since that the sugar industry paid off scientists to put the blame onto fat. So we cover a lot of this more in our Eat Savvy Diet Masterclass. So you can certainly jump on and see that. But when we really look at this is the challenge. We see so many packaged foods and sweet foods that are designed to sort of draw us in. And I think when I talk about it from the point of view of the nutritionists and how they're bound, I think it's disgusting that we're not telling diabetics the truth. So look at some of these things on the Diabetic Living magazine. Spectacular holiday desserts. You can have these sweet treats, salted caramel pretzel bars. It's almost like the system is designed to keep diabetics on medication. Let's not get into conspiracy theories here, and let's just take away 95% of people with diabetes, I think the statistics are worldwide, have type 2. Okay? So it used to be adult onset diabetes, for example. Now they even eliminate that. They call it type 1 and type 2 only because children are getting type 2 diabetes. So let's just take the autoimmune damage to the pancreatic cells, type 1 off the table when we're dealing with this, and just go type 2. Why aren't we telling diabetics the truth? Maybe it's because they'll be on medication for the rest of their life if we let them eat whatever they want. Because it's pretty much guaranteed that many endocrinologists and experts have said if we get the diabetics off the sugar and off the fructose as well, then they don't need medication. They don't need injections. They don't need tablets. They don't need anything. So why aren't we telling the diabetics the truth? Interesting, isn't it? And a lot of, again, you almost have to be a whistleblower if you're working within the system to go against this. And by the way, this article on this particular thing was actually written by a nutritionist, a bit of a whistleblowing nutritionist that talked about why aren't we telling diabetics the truth, and she followed more of a paleo type of diet. But, there was actually a report that showed the sugar lobby paid scientists to blur sugar's role in heart disease too. So this is why, this might be a bit of a funny cartoon here, but the high-carb diet I put you on, the doctor saying the high-carb diet I put you on 20 years ago gave you diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Oops. Well, this is what John Yudkin wrote about years and years and years ago, back in the 70s in Pure, White, and Deadly. So people just ignored him. The medical establishment ignored him. So what we need to do is we really need to look at how can we find the best choices. And so the verdict, sugar is a food that kills. And if you really want to go into that, you can look at things such as Gary Taubes and his book, The Case Against Sugar. Brilliant book that really, a real eye-opening book. And so he's a science writer. But again, so what can we do? If we're going to eat our sweets still, then we probably should be eliminating most sweet foods because we've become addicted to sweets. But let's just find savvier ones. And that's what the Eat Savvy diet's about, to help you find the safer sugars. The next one on the Eat Savvy diet is to be fructose frugal. Now, this is where, when we look at this, we become a little bit of disagreement starts to set in. Because many people really do believe fruit is necessary, and we have the dietary guidelines that say this many serves of fruits and vegetables. And so many people think, well, if I just eat all that in fruit, then that's okay. But we then neglect the recognition that fruit in the wild, animals, for example, eat fruit to fatten themselves up for hibernation. So if you're ready to fatten yourself up in summertime to hibernate through the winter where you burn off all of your fat stores, then you're good to go. But this is why many people say that if we just eat the in-season local fruits, then we'll be better off. Whereas now we're in this worldwide thing, we eat things all year round. And so again, what we call it is be fructose frugal. We recognize that there's a lot of nutrients in many of the foods, so many of the fruits, but look for the ones that offer the most nutrition with the least amount of sweetness. And that's why the spectrum of the Eat Savvy diet is there. And certainly avoid things such as high fructose corn syrup and these concentrated fructoses, and even juice, avoiding the juice. It's very different impact on your system when you have juice versus a whole piece of fruit. Okay, so let's be realistic. What we can all agree with here, whether you're into fruit or not, is that if you're going to have fructose, have it in the form of a whole piece of fruit or berries, for example, as a dessert or something like that, so that we get the nutrition and the fiber and everything rather than just the concentrated injection of fructose. If you really want to look at more information on that, you want to read up on that, The Plant Paradox by Stephen Gundry will cover being fructose frugal. Fat Chance by Robert Lustig will also cover that as well. So that's what I mean. When we come up with the spectrum and put together the Eat Savvy diet, we're really looking to help you put all of this information together. You can go and read all of the books, but again, we're really wanting to help you head in the right direction towards improving your health and well-being. So the next, we'll look at decreasing dairy. Now, we do believe that dairy is actually can actually be a healthy food. Most people, most people, even in the nutrition and healing realm, think of dairy as being only problematic, and that is true in most cases for Western processed factory farmed dairy. Okay, and we've got into a situation here where nutritionists will say, for example, without understanding the history of the dairy industry and why we started pasteurization, they will swear black and blue that for example, raw milk is poison. Now, raw milk is not able to be sold as a food here in this area and many places around the world, and yet Weston Price found that, and even Pottinger found that it was one of the best healing foods. It also is very good for feeding the gut microbiome, and also Chris Woolham's in his research into the gut microbiome found that it's a very good, basically probiotic food as well. So again, we've got to really look at what we're dealing with here when we're talking about decreasing dairy, and we basically then turn to the spectrum. And so for many people who do not have the ability to digest lactose, then they certainly do need to avoid typical milk. But many people still do well on the heavy creams and the ghees and those sorts of things, which, especially if it's from a grass-fed cow, that is rich in nutrition. And what's exciting is that when we really look back at the information that Dr. Price found, so Weston Price, he found that he believed that there was he called it a special activator. There was something magic, understanding that this was early time. He recognized that in products such as ghee, in the butter oil and everything, that there was some sort of a special compound that he saw that he called activator X. He didn't know what it was. And some scientists have said that's vitamin K2. Others believe there's more to it than that. So whatever it is, what we do recognize is that these natural fats from grass-fed dairy are rich in bioactive compounds. They're rich in things like conjugated linoleic acid, which can help you to shed fat. They're rich in the fat-soluble vitamins. And so many of these things are carriers for nutrition and very helpful for our whole system. So fascinating stuff. So certainly I don't tend to drink that much milk, but I do have cream and butter and ghee from grass-fed dairy. So that's just what I do. What you do depends on your ability to cope with dairy. I also do have yogurt, and I tend to make my own yogurt. This is my personal experience. I make my own yogurt from raw dairy if I can get it, or otherwise I do choose the A2 dairy, which is still factory commercial dairy, but I find that less inflammatory for me because it's pure A2 protein, and so it doesn't contain the A1 casein that can be inflammatory for most people. I don't seem to have a problem with lactose. Plus, when I'm making my own yogurt, I leave it a long time so it becomes very tart and digests up most of those sugars. But I haven't recognized that I have a lactose problem. So again, everybody's different there, so you've got to experiment with that. So one thing that we definitely can all agree on, no matter what our diet is that we really should be slaying the synthetics. So this is where, no matter what, vegan, paleo, keto, carnivore, any of that sort of thing, we've got to get rid of the colorings, the additives, the aspartame, the MSG, the dyes, the all of this. These are all nasty things. And so just, there's a lot of ways that they can be hidden as well. And I don't know whether I have the research in front of me at the moment, but maybe we can just share it at some other point. But I just had a list of some of the ways that they hide MSG on the label, for example. But certainly some of the things that we want to avoid, obviously margarine, hydrogenated vegetable fats, the typical refined table salt, aspartame, artificial sweeteners, MSG, anything like other food additives, colors. And so when you have a look at the labels, you can be tricked. So let's look at this. Let's look at marketing now. So I tend to eat butter, and yet now I see in the shops plant-based butter. Why are they calling it plant-based butter other than margarine? That's a marketing ploy. And when you look at the label, it's basically margarine with some buttermilk for a bit of flavor, and also other colorings. It's artificially colored and has flavorings. Well, it uses the buttermilk for a flavor, but when you look at butter, it's usually cream and salt. And when you look at the plant-based butter, there's 10 different ingredients, including artificial colorings or maybe natural from beta-carotene, but it's been packaged. And why are they doing that? They're marketing it to the desire for plant-based nutrition. It's a marketing ploy, not a health food. So refined oils, all of these things, like really the drinks, the soft drinks, and all that sort of thing. These are all foods that, in our opinion, kill. Right? We need to move towards the nutritionally rich foods. They're the foods that heal. All right, so slay those synthetics. So again, we really want to give up on the grains. Giving up on the grains is a wise move too. We really believe that the food pyramid is somewhat wrong. If you want to look like the food pyramid, then eat like the food pyramid. And so we do need to make some dietary changes. And giving up on the grains, or at least learning to use them well, at least learning to prepare them well would be a really good idea. But I would agree mostly with Dr. Berry that we give up the grains. But there's a lot of argument here. But what we do know is that systemic inflammation is at the base of most diseases. And that unless you know exactly how to prepare and deactivate the anti-nutrients in grains, that they can be a problem for you. They can set you up for inflammation and don't provide you with really nutrition. So all they do is fill you up. So that's great. And not only that, but most grains, if you're not eating organic grain, then a lot of grains are heavily contaminated with glyphosate. And so if you are going to consume grains, then please make sure that they're properly prepared and organic. Now, that being said, every now and then, I don't believe in necessarily absolutes. And I have seen some benefits for some people in having grain every now and then. So I will have some basmati rice every now and then. I will have some hulled millet every now and then. So I do think that it's still good to sort of include these foods. I don't have a problem with those grains, but I don't think of them as health foods. I do think of them, I cook them and then cool them and then reheat them again, because then it's like a resistant starch for the microbiome. It feeds the microbiome. So then that's good. And I don't notice bloating and problems with those foods, depending on what it's combined with. So again, you have to factor that in. And in most cases, if you haven't got your weight under control and your blood sugar under control, you're probably best to avoid the grains altogether. And certainly that's what these people, Dr. William Davis, Dr. David Perlmutter, and Tom O'Brien, have all said in their book. So again, if you want to understand why we have the things on the spectrum that we have, then you can read each of those books. But let me just give you a little bit of a glimpse into what Dr. William Davis has to say about why we can agree with, even if we're going to eat grains, why we really would be wise to simply avoid wheat. Let's bring on Dr. Davis.
The doctor who created Bill O'Reilly's new diet says skip the hamburger rolls and pasta salad at your Labor Day cookout. Dr. William Davis is a cardiologist and author of the best-selling book, Wheat Belly, Lose the Wheat, Lose the Weight, and Find Your Path Back to Health. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Labor Day.
You too.
Why, in your estimation, is wheat so bad?
It's not wheat. It's an 18-inch tall plant created by genetics research in the 60s and 70s. This thing has many new features nobody told you about, such as there's a new protein in this thing called gliadin. We're not talking about gluten, so I'm not addressing the people who have gluten sensitivities and celiac disease. I'm talking about everybody else, because everybody else is susceptible, for instance, to the gliadin protein that is an opiate. This thing binds to the opiate receptors in your brain, and in most people stimulates appetite, such that you and I consume, on average, 440 more calories per day, 365 days per year. I bet you're hungry right now.
I'm always hungry right now.
We did just the bagels on the front of the book here do look appetizing. That said, so it's not necessarily the wheat. It's the kind of wheat that we're eating.
That's right. It's not the wheat that Mom had. It's not the wheat that Grandma had. It's a very different genetically changed plant. By the way, this all predates the techniques of genetic modification. So these techniques were crude, imprecise, unpredictable, far worse than modern genetic modification. So the stuff we're sold to us, no questions asked, is the product of research that occurred before the techniques of gene splicing. So this thing's very different, has many new, unique properties on humans. But the appetite stimulation effect is probably the most standout effect of all. But there are others.
Would it be possible to turn back the clock and go back to the old wheat? I mean, is that scientifically possible at this point in time?
It's very possible. It's economically unfeasible, probably, because this thing yields about tenfold more per acre. And so we'd have to ask farmers to take a loss in effect. We'd have to ask agribusiness to revert back to old seeds. They can do it. They probably won't do it. Now, we have sparked a movement, and we are having a lot of people. They're having record drops in sales because of this, because so many people. I think what's driving this is the tidal wave of change. If 3 people lost 8 pounds, well, big deal. This thing just dies and fizzles, right? But we're seeing hundreds of thousands of people losing 30, 80, 150 pounds, diabetics becoming no longer diabetic, people with arthritis having dramatic relief, people losing their legs swelling, acid reflux, irritable bowel syndrome, depression, on and on and on, every day.
So here's the question. If people want to start eating healthier today, then, and they can't afford to go to a specialty store, they can't afford to manufacture their own wheat, what do they start doing right now?
Eat real single ingredient foods. Eat avocados, olives, olive oil, meats, olives, vegetables. In other words, real food. The stuff that is least likely to have been changed by agribusiness. Certainly not grains. So when I say grains, of course, over 90% of all grains we eat are going to be wheat. It's not barley. It's not millet. It's not flax. It's going to be wheat. So it's really a wheat issue. Wheat has been the recipient of this extensive set of changes.
And yet there are a lot of farmers who deal in these grains who would argue otherwise. The Mayo Clinic argues otherwise. They say you need a well-balanced diet, and that includes wheat.
That's right, because all that literature says if you replace something bad, white enriched flour products, with something less bad, whole grains, and there's an apparent health benefit, let's eat a whole bunch less bad things. So I take Tareyton unfiltered cigarettes replaced with Salem filtered cigarettes. You should smoke Salems. That is the logic of nutrition. It is a flawed, deeply flawed logic. What if we take the next step and say, let's eliminate all grains? What happens then? Particularly eliminate this modern thing created by genetics research called semi-dwarf wheat. That's when you see not improvements in health, that's when you see transformations in health.
You gave me a weird look when I said I had a whole wheat bagel this morning.
Well, you're working, and you got away with it.
I was trying to fire up before the broadcast, but that, generally speaking, even the whole wheat, just to reiterate, you're saying is a bad idea.
It's a very bad idea. In fact, I'll say modern wheat is a perfect chronic poison. It causes diabetes, it causes inflammation, it causes heart disease, it causes high blood pressure. Just because whole grains are less harmful than white flour does not make it a good thing. So we've got to use a whole new brand of clear logic on this. If we eliminate grains, eliminate wheat really, specifically semi-dwarf, high-yield wheat, that's when we see transformations. That's when you see all the diabetics get rid of their drugs. That's when you see people with rheumatoid arthritis throwing away all their drugs for joint pain. That's where you see high cholesterol going away. You see incredible transformations in health.
Food for thought?
A lot of food for thought. Please avoid the breakfast tray in the green room if you would, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so I hope you found that valuable there, and I don't know whether we'll have some problems with this broadcast as a result of sharing that particular information, but I really did want to be able to share that with you because it just sums up the fact that we can make a transformation if we can really eliminate some of these things that aren't doing us any good. So I think the verdict there is wheat a food that kills or a food that heals? It's definitely a food that kills. So we're best off to avoid it. And then we can take it the next level and really avoid grains. And many of these people do believe that we really should be avoiding grains in most cases. And certainly that's one of the things that Dr. Stephen Gundry believes as well. So, you know, food for thought, as they said there. That's what we're about. We want to help you transform, not just get a little bit better. Okay, and so that's why sometimes it may seem like it's a big step, but with the sliding scale of the concept with the Eat Savvy diet is you can make steps in the right direction. You don't have to make this quantum leap in your dietary change, but you can make a transformation and a quantum leap in your health with step-by-step changes along the way, and we're here to guide you all along that process. So the, you know, again, remember what we said before and what Dr. Ken Berry said. Lose the sugar, lose the grains, and lose the vegetable oils. And when we think about packaged foods, pretty much most packaged foods, you can create almost anything with sugar, artificial colors and flavors and all that sort of thing, additives, hydrogenated vegetable oils, and wheat. You just have a look on the labels. That's what's in most of the packaged foods. So it's really simple. If you eliminate packaged foods, you're going to dramatically decrease your exposure to some of these problematic foods. So then that leads us now to a whole food, yet a food that can be particularly problematic. And that's lose the legumes, or at least learn to prepare them properly. Now, legumes include peanuts, beans, lentils. Okay, so if you must have beans, prepare them properly and cook them yourself using a proper soaking methods and a pressure cooker. Soaking and fermenting are ways that have traditionally been used by cultures that knew of the problematic aspects of these foods. So proper preparation and cooking deactivates a lot of the anti-nutrients and the plant toxins that make you sick. So one of the things, for example, with people who avoid animal foods is, for example, like let's say the water from chickpeas can be used as a substitute for eggs and works quite well. But here's the problem. The water in the chickpeas contains all the anti-nutrients and inflammatory agents and everything, so it's certainly not healthy. It might make things seem the same as using an egg, but it's basically devoid of nutrition and contains anti-nutrients that can stop you absorbing your nutrition. So you haven't made a step in the right direction by doing that. And, you know, I've even seen expert chefs on that purport to be great with their wellness and everything just say, oh, you don't need to drain the things, just put the whole tin in there. And all that thing is like, no, you want, if you're going to use a tin, which isn't the ideal thing to do, if you're going to use a tin of beans, then definitely rinse them very well. Okay, so again, this is the thing. Some of the beans do have a lot of resistant starch. They feed the microbiome, but along for the ride comes a lot of these anti-nutrients and inflammatory agents that can be a problem for many people. So Dr. Stephen Gundry, author of The Plant Paradox, who's done a lot of research and actually worked at the Loma Linda University there, which is one of the blue zones, and dealt with vegans in the Seventh-day Adventist community. He asserts that a lot of them were very, very unhealthy, but it is true that they did live a long life. But what he's seen is that it's, again, we've got to be careful with the amount of these lectins, these inflammatory things that can be in grains and nightshade vegetables as well as legumes and the like. So we just, again, careful with the legumes, or at least, at least reduce them. If you are vegetarian or vegan, then definitely you will want to continue to consume legumes, but you will want to prepare them yourself, in my opinion. So there are some other nutrients that are in foods, such as the nightshade vegetables, and that's why we really have certain vegetables on a spectrum. So tomatoes, again, look, when we look at this, the nightshades are another issue. There's a lot of anti-nutrients in grains and legumes and all that sort of thing that we've already been dealing with. But nightshades, tomatoes, eggplants, zucchinis, potatoes, the chilies, all of those sorts of things, they can be problematic and inflammatory for many people. Now, there are ways historically that they used to treat them. Like, why does Italian passata have no seeds and no skin? Why isn't it just pureed, chopped up, and all that sort of thing? Well, the anti-nutrients are in the skin and the seeds. So you've got rid of all the lectins, all of the nasty bits, really. So again, you know, I was watching a cooking show the other day and they were just sort of saying, oh, what we're going to do is we're going to bake the capsicum and we're going to remove the skin and the seeds. It's like, okay, do you know why you're historically doing that? Is it just for the texture? As a chef, you think it's just the texture. Is it because you're also removing all of the anti-nutrients when you do that? So there are things that we can do to remove those nutrients, those anti-nutrients, the inflammatory agents, and still eat the foods. Because all of these anti-nutrients, and these are natural toxins in the plant that the plant used to stop you as a predator from eating it. And so what happens is we become less sensitive in this day and age so that we don't worry about that. Now here's the thing. An alcoholic... If an alcoholic who already drinks a bottle of vodka a day gives up beer, it's like not that much of a difference, right? So we're not talking about that. So if you're still on all of the packaged foods and grains and commercial dairy and all that sort of thing, giving up tomatoes isn't really probably going to make that much of a difference. You're not going to notice, because you've still got the biggest load there, okay? Whereas if you've done some of the basic things and you're going, I'm still not right, I've still got achy joints, or I still get headaches and everything, that's my thing. I'd given up most grains, all the inflammatory agents and all that sort of thing, and I really did not believe that nightshade vegetables were the issue for me. I really did not believe that I would be sensitive. Because they're healthy foods, they're natural foods. So being a foodie and having worked in Mediterranean restaurants and all that sort of thing, I would do baba ganoush made from eggplant, and I would do grilled zucchinis and tomato dishes and all these sorts of things. And my barbecued zucchini and barbecued eggplant almost became famous. And I would be doing legumes and all this sort of stuff, and I would be getting headaches. I eliminated the nightshades and my headaches went away. So I've been to chiropractors and massage therapists and all sorts of different therapists, Chinese therapists, to try to work out whether it was the meridian that was connected to my gallbladder and all this sort of thing. Why do I get these headaches, and why does it occur at certain times, and why does it occur that? And I would try to tell them everything. I have documented it. I put it in the calendar to try to work out what was the thing. I eliminated nightshades. No potatoes, no eggplant, no capsicum, no zucchini, no tomatoes, and my headaches went away. This isn't just, I'm not just sharing with you fictitious stuff. This has worked for me. It's worked for countless members of our community, and it could work for you too. Just think about what Dr. Davis said about just things. Start with the basics. Start with the really bad foods, and then let's move on from there. But if you're going to be having meats, go grass-fed and wild-caught, even if that means you eat maybe a bit less. Quality does matter. Pastured grass-fed meat like beef, lamb, even kangaroo for the Aussies here, free-range eggs, pork, chicken, turkey, and duck are all good sources of protein. Eat plenty of fish and seafood, but also wild-caught, not farmed. So that means for much of the time, that means that, you know, here in Australia, we're big on the barramundi and that sort of thing, farmed. We're big on such things such as smoked salmon, and salmon nowadays all farmed. So, and I like my salmon, but I've moved away from that because it's mostly farmed, and it's very hard to get a nice piece of salmon that's not farmed. So I've never been a tinned sort of fish kind of person. I don't have tuna anymore, but I do have salmon, tinned pink or red salmon. And I do have sardines now because they're rich in these omega-3 fats. I make sure that they're from, that they're wild caught fish. Yes, the tinning process isn't ideal, but I am living in the Western world, and all we can do is all we can do, and all we can do is enough. It's just really looking to stack the odds in our favors. So yes, in essence, nightshade vegetables contain these lectins. Lectins, gluten is a lectin. It's a plant protein. And these are the things. So what happens is, if we think about this is off the topic of wild-caught fish and grass-fed beef and pastured chickens and pork and all that sort of thing, but back to the anti-nutrients and the nightshades. See, an animal, when we think of it from a predator point of view, the animal can run away. If we catch it, its defenses are down and we eat it. There's nothing in the animal then that will try to attack us. Plants can't run. So they became very creative with their chemical warfare to deter us from eating them. And they've actually done research. You think that plants are dumb, and you think that, we've got to be not cruel to the animals and eat plants. They have done research where they've connected up to electrodes and all this sort of thing. And if a caterpillar is chewing on the plant over here on this leaf, there are changes, biochemical and electrical changes going on in other parts of the plant. It's defending itself from it being eaten. So these plant nutrients, these natural lectins, these natural plant chemicals were really the plant warfare to stop predators from eating, right? And so when we think about it, what do we really like? Plants that and then the plant baby. What are the plant babies? You've seen a lion and her cubs will defend the lion, defend against those cubs, right? Well, what about plants? What are their babies? They're the seeds. We're told that seeds are just all healthy for us. All nuts and seeds are healthy for us. Well, they contain anti-nutrients. And so we've got to properly prepare those. And that may be either soaking or roasting. But raw nuts, far from being probably the best for us, are sometimes rich in these anti-nutrients. So we've got to be careful with how much we're eating. A little bit on our salad and all that thing won't make a difference. But again, they can be a problem. All right. So next on the list of the Eat Savvy diet is feast on fats. And so what do we mean by that? Well, the fats that heal are the grass-fed butter, the ghee, the cocoa butter, coconut oil. These all can reduce your cravings and give you energy. They're not bad for you. So even saturated fat from meat is really healthful for you. As I said before, the sugar industry paid off scientists to put the blame on fat rather than sugar. But there are bad fats. So the fats that heal are all those monounsaturated fats, like, so for your salads, avocado oil and olive oil, great. For your cooking, things like ghee or beef tallow or, even, and then things that you can put into making your own, perhaps chocolate, using coconut oil and cocoa butter and those sorts of things with some raw cacao, all can be really good. But what we really want to avoid is the toxic fats, the fats that kill. Corn oil, soy oil, canola oil, peanut oil, these sorts of things. And not only that, but many of these oils are also laced with the glyphosate. So we really do need to, again, avoid the fats that kill and feast on the healthy fats. And this is where we've been led astray somewhat, that back in the 80s, we were really against this whole cholesterol. And now we've been told, fat's not so bad. But if you're looking for the right fats, then just reach for the Eat Savvy diet, where it can really show you some of those, some of those things to focus on. So what I might do is roll a video to really cover this issue of the good and the bad things in our diet, and really historically what went wrong. So this is a clip from the movie Fat Head by Tom Norton.
Over the past 30 years, millions of Americans have developed a condition that doctors call metabolic syndrome. It begins with high blood sugar and can eventually cause insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. And that's the real epidemic. So what's causing it? Well, a big part of the problem might just be the very advice that was supposed to make us healthy.
And you ask if I've got the facts, I just might have a heart attack.
Now, it's probably not going to make my doctor very happy to hear this, but I ran an analysis on my fast food diet so far. I'm about 2 weeks into it, and I'm getting about 54% of my calories from fat and about 22% of my calories from saturated fat. According to all the usual dietary advice, that means my cholesterol is probably shooting up. I'm putting myself at risk for a heart attack down the line if I keep doing this.
The usual advice for avoiding heart disease is to eat a low-fat diet with plenty of whole grains and substitute vegetable oils for saturated animal fats. But does that advice really fit with human biology? Let's start with one simple idea. Mother Nature isn't stupid. She didn't make human beings the only species on Earth who prefers foods that will kill us. So what do human beings naturally like to eat?
Your natural preference is for things that are salty, things that are sweet, and things that are fatty. You have those three native desires for good reason. Those are the things that are good for you. That's where the nutrients that you need are located.
In nature, sweet means fruit, along with certain vegetables like carrots, and those are good for you. Fats occur naturally in foods like olives and nuts, but for most of human history, the biggest source of fat was saturated animal fat, which is fatty and salty. Yum, yum. And for millions of years, this is exactly how we ate. We ate no sugar, almost no starch, a little bit of vegetable fat, and a whole lot of saturated animal fat, up to 5 or even 10 times as much as the experts say we should. But almost nobody got heart disease.
If you look at pre-agricultural humans, at their skeletal remains, the cortical thickness of their bones, they're robust, they're tall, they had good teeth. When societies became agricultural and we became short of stature, tooth decay became rampant, infections were rampant. Human health devolved when we adopted agriculture.
So there you have it. All right, so let's wrap things up here with a couple of the other tips that are really important here. Obviously, maintaining a microbiome. We've been talking here about the M&Ms, and this is back to one of those issues about fermented food. So one of the 4 pillars that Dr. Kate Shanahan talks about. And so certainly your microbiome can adjust to your diet and everything, but a lot of people have killed off their natural microbiome with antibiotics and all that sort of thing. So moving towards really restoring that with fermented and cultured foods is really helpful. And obviously opting for organic where possible is really valuable. But again, here in the Savvy team, we assert that there's no point, like if you're going to have an organic food that's sort of that you see moldy and dying and wilted and all that sort of thing, which is better? A sort of dead and dying organic food or a fresh bit of traditional produce? Again, you've got to make a judgment call there. It all depends on your sensitivities. I tend to prefer to look for the freshest food possible, and if that means that I'm not always eating organic, then that's okay. There are certain foods that are better for you to eat organic, such as, obviously the leafy things, but any of the things that you peel are less of a problem. But the reason organic is important, if you possibly can, is because of, as I mentioned there, this increase in the disease and death rate after the introduction of glyphosate. And the glyphosate's used mostly on all of the genetically modified crops, and so mostly on grains and seed oil. So if you simply eliminate grains and eliminate all the vegetable oils like we suggest, you're going to reduce your exposure to glyphosate, so long as you don't use Roundup around your home, because that's been linked to autoimmune diseases, it's been linked to obesity, it's been linked to increased diabetes, it's been linked to developmental disorders in your children, it's been linked to ADD, it's been linked to autism and all those sorts of things. So again, the more we can eat organic, the better. So cook carefully as well. So we have some, again, some ways of cooking in the Eat Savvy diet. So barbecuing and burning and char grilling will introduce carcinogenic impurities to food that would otherwise be good. Whereas, you know, your sous vide cooking, slow cooking, you know, putting things in a slow cooker and gradually doing it, or steaming or whatever, these are all much better and safer choices. So that's all covered in the free download of the Eat Savvy Diet, and that was been basically an overview of the 12 steps to get you started. And really, the Eat Savvy protocol optimizes all of our wellness plans as well. So whether you start just with changing your diet and then you move on to one of the wellness plans, or whether you've been on one of the wellness plans and you want to optimize your results with that, the Eat Savvy Diet is really, really helpful. So it's just a matter of asking yourself, is it savvy? Now, we're not big fans of ripe bananas because they're so rich in fructose. But if we were comparing it to a fudge sundae or whatever, I tell you what, I enjoy frozen ripe banana. It's like an ice cream for me. So, you know, you just do the best you can, but best if you give fruit the boot for best effect. But, you know, and again, so I use fruit as more of a treat or a dessert. And so whether that be frozen blueberries with a little bit of cream, or a frozen banana with some yogurt, those sorts of things, then that's, you know, really, then you're stacking odds. You're not doing too much. So some soaked prunes and the juice with yogurt, for example, is quite nice and sweet enough for me. If none of that is sweet enough for you, then we definitely need to have a talk. That means you become addicted to sugar, and that is part of the problem, part of the triggering of the addiction centers in your brain that both things such as wheat and sugar can do. So jump on, definitely download the Eat Savvy Diet and follow those 12 steps that are on the blog, because when you do that, you're really taking a step towards choosing to be healthier and moving towards that higher level of wellness. If you're not already part of our Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Facebook group, then I would encourage you to request an invitation in there where we can sort of tag you and show you other information and deeper information about some of the action plans that we have. And of course, there's a heap of information on our blog as well. Just a couple of stories from people who have followed the Eat Savvy Diet here. So, for example, here's one community member who dropped 8 kilos, went from a size 12 to a size 6. You know, very, very quickly following our detox protocol and Eat Savvy approach. But she also reshaped her body, her skin improved, and you can see that she looks considerably different. And here's another one here. Again, what Dave did is he was going to go onto our rapid fat loss protocol, but, you know, based on his stress levels and work and all that sort of thing, we decided that he really should focus more on just the Eat Savvy Diet and doing a detox and sort of practicing losing weight, not even trying too hard. And so, as he said, I lost 20 kilos just practicing. And now I can see that I put weight on when I'm not savvy. My health has improved, my joints have become more free-moving, and I'm sleeping better too. That's what it can really do for you. So download the free Eat Savvy Diet and follow those 12 steps that are out on the blog, and you'll really, really start to stack the odds in your favor. But look, how else can we help you? We have an online survey or even a form, old school form we can send you to find out what are the things that you're struggling with right now. And then we can point you towards action plans and steps and ideas. And even maybe your Savvy Team Wellness Guide can even do a free How Can We Help discovery session with you, whether it be by Skype or Zoom or whatever. They can actually just have a chat, or even in person, have a chat with you about what would be the next action steps for you. So definitely reach out to us or talk with your Savvy Team Wellness Guide about having a discovery session. So, you know, like my original mentor in the health and healing field experienced, I saw many different things working with him over the years. And one of the things that he said is, given the right conditions, including physical, emotional, and mental preparedness, your body will always heal itself. And so here in the Savvy Team, we're really there to guide you towards making those changes so that your body can heal. We're not treating any disease. We're not working on the issues. We like to say, if you can tell us what you want, we can show you how to achieve it, because we start to look to correct the underlying issues that lead to disease. So we can help you come up with a plan. We'll point you towards specific solutions, guide you along the way. And what's great is that when you tap in with the community, you'll have all the support that you need to get it done. So we would absolutely love to know whether you had any particular gems that jumped out from doing that particular program. Congratulations if you've been here for this length of time live with us, or if you're catching the replay, let us know in the comments. Do share with us any particular insights that you have. So if you have only just recently joined us here on the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show, let's jump on into the Wealthy and Wise section. And I wanted to talk to you about whether your goals are wishy-washy. But if you're new to what we do here in the Savvy Team, we help you enjoy improved health and lifestyle. And, you know, this issue of wishy-washy goals is what I want to talk to you about and share with you a couple of things that I've experienced in my life there. And why the picture of the dog there? Well, you'll see in just a moment. But wishy-washy goals that don't get you motivated and taking any action. And that's what we're really talking about here. And Tony Robbins said, people are not lazy. They simply have impotent goals. That is, goals that do not inspire them. So, you know, if you've been struggling with not taking action towards the things that you wish and hope for and everything, maybe you have impotent goals. And so what we need to do is we need to smarten them up a bit. And, whether that be goals for improving your health and lifestyle, your well-being, or whether it be goals in business and life and your personal life and your family life and all that sort of thing, it's really good to focus on clear, strategic goals. So the reason for our picture of the puppy here in terms of goals is, I guess if you've had the vision of a dog that just won't walk, that's stubborn, versus one that's eager and pulling on a chain. I've got this video here that I thought I just had to share with you. So let's look at how problematic it can be if the dog just won't walk. Let's have a look at this one.
I will go no further. Like, oh no, don't leave me. Oh. It's like I have the attention of the people. I have the power. Oh. Excuse me, sir. I think your dog's broken. Oh.
So look, sometimes we don't have, if you don't have goals that inspire you into action, then your subconscious mind, your mind being like a psycho-cybernetic, like a cybernetic mechanism, and that's what the principle of psycho-cybernetics was about by Maxwell Maltz, is about, seeking out how to get the job done. Our brain looks for ways to get the job done. And if we don't have clear goals, our brain, our subconscious mind might be a bit like that dog and just stubbornly going, I'm not going anywhere. You're not moving me. Whereas if you have goals that inspire you, that aren't impotent, as Tony Robbins would say, then you're going to be more likely to be like one of those dogs that you see pulling on a leash, eager to get out there and get it done. So what are some of the things that help us to create these goals? Well, that's where the acronym of SMART goals comes in. But basically, I like to put it this way. All you need is 3 basic ingredients: a dream and a plan, something in mind, and some ideas on how you would get that done, some excitement and enthusiasm by thinking about that. So if the dream and a plan actually gets you inspired, then that will give you the excitement and enthusiasm. So you're not like that dog there refusing to go anywhere. And number 3, the third basic ingredient, is inspired and disciplined action. And, a lot of the times we can be stopped because we think that we need to know the whole way to get there. And it's like whether it's the health journey or a business journey or any journey in our life and everything, we're stopped at making the first step because we don't know the whole process. So I really want to encourage you to keep the vision of what you want in your mind, but make that first logical step. Keep asking yourself, well, what's the next logical step? What's the next logical step? So we've been going through in this show all about improving your diet. So for example, what's the next logical step? Might be clean out the pantry, get rid of the packaged food, for example. So what do I want? What's my goal? I want a fit, healthy body that's free of disease and all that sort of thing. What's my next logical step? Follow the Eat Savvy diet, get rid of the chemicals, get rid of that, book a session with a wellness guide. For example, they're an example of how to set the vision and then look for the next logical step. You don't need to know how it's all going to go. You just need to take the first step. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Beginning is half done. They're all nice sayings, nice aphorisms and everything, but they actually are truths as well. So I really like, we've done programs in the past based around this book, The Science of Getting Rich, and this is actually a special manuscript we put together that's footnoted and has workshop things in there called The Science of Getting Rich. Wallace Wattles, The Science of Getting Rich. We're looking to maybe even do a program again online about that, so let us know if that sounds like something you'd like. But he talks about just spending your leisure time, some of your leisure time, just in quiet contemplation of what you really want to achieve. In other words, visualizing it, and visualizing the way you want it rather than the way you don't want it. So I have to share a story with you about that, about being clear, because there's I want to know whether you've seen the movie. Let me just see whether I can bring that up for some reason. I don't have that. Where are we? So have you seen the movie Bedazzled? There we go. I'll bring that up there for you now. The movie Bedazzled. Now, there's an old version and a newer version, and so I've seen I haven't seen the original version, but this one I love, with Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley. And it's just great. Around about 2000, so it's quite an old movie now, really 20 years old-ish. And it's just a great show. So it's an example. So the storyline goes that she's the devil and he makes a deal with the devil to get his 3 wishes and everything. Or whatever it is, 7 wishes. And she dupes him and finds ways to make the things not quite... So you can see the wishes that he makes, that she's fulfilled upon them, but they're not quite right because he wasn't specific in the goals that he set. So this is where it's really important to sort of sit down and just really visualize yourself involved in that. And that's what Wallace talks about. That's really the process of the science of getting rich, being able to hold the vision of what you want in your mind and create it and actually get very specific with it. And so that's a really funny show to give you the example of the importance of getting specific, because you can see that she gives him all of his wishes, but they're off in some way each and every time. Now, there's no, the movie sort of, in a lot of ways, makes you sort of feel as though, oh, I might get it wrong. There's no getting it wrong because you can choose again. See, because we don't have only a finite number of wishes. We have an unlimited number of wishes. We can continually choose again. Oh, that's not quite what I want. I want this. And we choose again, and we choose again. So there's no fear needed in this. It's just get clear on what you want and go after it. So one of the things I just wanted to share with you regarding that, when we talk about these goals being specific, this is where the acronym of SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. I'm not going to go into that in this particular session, but I wanted to share with you an example that happened I shared with you, I think it was last session, about me ending up with getting because I focused on what I didn't want in a car, I got that. Well, I wanted to share with you a story about my mother. And my mother actually had the dream of having a Jag. Now, I told you that I ended up buying one in my earlier years, but it was actually a dream that my mother had of driving a Jag, and it was a specific type. So this is the old Jaguar motor car. Now, what she used to visualize, she said to me, I see a Jag in my driveway. This is what happened for her, because anyone visiting used to just pull up in the driveway, right? Because it was quite a big, wide driveway and everything. And so she used to visualize a Jag in the driveway. First of all, my aunt pulled up in the driveway with her new, wasn't new, but her Jag. It was a black one, pulled up in the driveway. And Mum would be out there looking at it and going, oh, I want one, something like this. Probably not a black one, and all that sort of thing. But she visualized a Jag in her driveway, and she had a Jag in her driveway. So then, not so long after, she still didn't get her Jag and everything. Not so long after, I decide that I'm going to have a Jag. I pull up in the driveway. And then we really realized that she had been visualizing a Jag in the driveway. She never saw herself getting into it. She never saw herself driving it. She was never specific. She saw it in the driveway. And so when you realize we could almost assert that she was involved in bringing that vision to reality, but she was not specific enough. 2 times she had that brought to her. So my aunt visiting regularly, Jag in the driveway. Me visiting Mum, Jag in the driveway. She was never specific. Do you have SMART goals? Do you have goals that motivate you into action, that get you moving, that don't mean that you're just sitting there like a stubborn dog, that turn you into an eager dog and that's pulling on a leash rather than sitting there stubborn, not moving? Everything's there. You just get to choose. Okay, so set some SMART goals. Just a bit of food for thought for you right there, and get specific too. So look, if you are, by the way, looking for ways to optimize your income, achieve your goals faster, all that sort of thing. So one of the things that we do through our Savvy Home Business division is we help people to capitalize on the current trends in the wellness industry and create a side hustle income around whatever else they're doing. So if that interests you, then definitely reach out to us and we can put you in one of our private groups that explain all of that. But look, here on the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show, we want to just really help you to know how to improve your health and lifestyle. So for your best journey in self-improvement, you need a plan. You need some solutions. You really want guidance, and you want community, and that's what we provide for you. So please do let us know, how can we help you, and request an invitation into our community. So that's it for the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show. Congratulations for being with us, and we look forward to catching up with you next time around. Thank you for your comments here on the show. And again, we would absolutely love to know what insights that you have got from the show. So share with us in the comments. Let us know also if there's some items that you'd like to know more about. We'd love to hear from you. So that's it from me, Corey Sievers, here with the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show, and encouraging you to be savvy. So until next time, all the best, and we'll catch you again soon.